Bradley Cooper, Ed Helms, and Zach Galifianakis wake up with an even bigger hangover in a completely new environment with a completely new problem in The Hangover Part 2. Hey everybody, this is Rob, and thank you for checking out R&B Reviews and watching my review for The Hangover Part 2. The film reunites the wolf pack from the widely successful Hangover movie from a couple years ago, and the plot is Stu is getting married in Thailand because his bride's parents are from there and they want to hold the wedding there. Phil's character, Bradley Cooper's character Phil, is back, and he's invited along as Doug from the first film, which, he's the person that they lost in the first film. They're kind of reluctant to invite Zach Galifianakis' Alan character along because of what happened in the first film. And if you have seen the first film, you know what I'm talking about. But after a night of partying, they wake up in a hotel in Bangkok, and they lost Stu's bride's younger brother who is partying with them. They find a finger in the hotel that they think belongs to him, and then they go back and try to figure out where they were and piece everything together. In my opinion, usually sequels, they're not usually as good as the first film, except for a couple of exceptions. In my opinion, I think Empire Strikes Back is a little bit better than Star Wars: A New Hope, and Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan I think is a little bit better than Star Trek: The Motion Picture, although I like that one too. But in most cases, the sequel is just not as good as the first film, and I think this Hangover Part 2 is an excellent example of that. For one thing, to me, it just is not as funny as the first film. The gags are not as funny, the dialogue and the jokes aren't as crisp as the first film. I kind of find it a little odd that they would hang out with Mr. Chow, played by Ken Jeong, and they ran into him, and, especially after what happened in the first film. And the film, it just seems kind of slowly paced than the first one. The first one I thought went much faster, and I thought it went, at a quicker pace. The jokes and the gags are much faster and snappier and stuff like that. But when I was in the screening room, we had a decent-sized audience in the room, and one woman laughed and clapped her hands while everybody else, including myself, just sat there, chuckled here and there, and watched. For me, the biggest laugh came in a scene where they visit a strip dance club. That's the one where Alan accidentally shoots a gun off in the club. The whole chunk there, I thought, was probably the best and the funniest scene in the whole movie. But to me, the film doesn't really try too many new things. I mean, the movie begins like a scene-by-scene remake of the first film, like where they open toward in the middle of their hangover period, and then after the credits it goes up in this time period before that, like in this case a week before they go to Bangkok. What if they open the film like a week before? I think going that route, that might have been a little bit different. And, I mean, they changed the location, they changed the person they're looking for, but I feel like they could have done a little bit more. Like, what if their friend Doug, who they lost in the first film, went with them on their little escapades? What happened if he would have been more involved than what he was in this sequel? And all these situations they get into, how would he react? I would have liked to have seen that. And, we get something different to it. We get another marriage coming up, Stu's getting married, and all that. But I mean, again, that's kind of like the same thing that happened in the first film. I don't know about you, but I think the characters were maybe a little bit more meaner here than they were in the first film. I think Bradley Cooper is a little bit more aggressive, especially in a scene where he's being a little rough with Stu in the beginning, like when he swears at a restaurant. And Alan, played by Zach Galifianakis, is mean to Stu's bride's brother. I mean, he does have a reason to be, but sometimes I think he can overdo it a bit. I don't know what the problem was. I don't know if, I think they got, well, the thing is they got different writers to write the sequel than in the first film. I don't know if the original writers from the first film didn't want to come back and do a sequel or what, but I think the original writers, I think they had very good gags and a very good storyline that really go well. And I think they really knew the characters, but in the writers for the sequel, I think they try to copy it and follow the example, but it ends up not working. It has some fun moments here and there, and Zach Galifianakis I think is funny as Alan, but to me I felt like the film was, a little bit more slowly paced than the first film was, and to me it just wasn't as funny. It did make a lot of money over the weekend, but to me I don't think it's necessarily worth going out to see in theaters. I think Hangover Part 2 is definitely more of a renter in my opinion, so that's what I'm going with. And because of the money that was made on this film over the opening weekend, there's already talk of making a Hangover Part 3, and frankly, I don't think that it can work a third time around. I think they would have to change the situation or maybe change the characters, but I don't know if people would go back and see a third sequel in a situation like that where it's completely different characters, I'd say definitely they should come, if they're going to make a third film, they're going to have to come up with an even more fresh approach than how they did here. But anyway, that's my review for Hangover Part 2, and thank you very much for watching. Go ahead and leave your comments about the movie if you have seen it or about this video. And here's a look at movies that are going to be coming out on DVD that we've reviewed on R&B Reviews. So thank you for watching. The first third of the movie I really didn't like. I laughed maybe like only 3 times, like during Rachel Dratch's cameo, and then there's a satirical moment with Bo talks with Kevin Nealon. I kind of thought it was funny, and the banter Sandler and Aniston do when she first meets Palmer was also pretty funny as well. I think when all the characters go to Hawaii to bond, I think that is when the film starts becoming funny, and I think that's when the picture really took off. The film it's common to other Sandler films I've seen. There's some dumb humor and there's a lot of crotch gags, but because the actors seem to be having fun, I think that's why I think I ended up enjoying the film much more than I thought I would. This version is definitely darker than the first film, which I thought was more of a brighter and uplifting movie in comparison. First, the photography here is much darker and grittier, and the humor is also pretty dark, but occasionally there are some light, funny moments, like when Cogburn and LaBeef, played by Matt Damon, are shooting cornbread in a field to see who's more manly enough. I really like that scene. I also liked how, in this film, LaBeef and Rooster seem to be more rivals, even though they're kind of working together. There's more of a rivalry here than in the first version of the film. It felt like in the first film that they were just 2 guys hanging out and occasionally boasting to each other, you know. I think this version definitely pays more attention to the little details, like, for example, the sets and the costumes looked more realistic of the period, and the villains, they look like they've been outside for a real long time.